Well, I tell y'all that for the moment we come back on, just wanted to update you all with how the sanding is coming along on these. We finally just, already in the last video, got the first grit done on them. Now we're going to do a grit that is slightly a little bit less coarse, but not as fine as the last one is going to be. We're going to kind of work our way along here to kind of make it so it's going to be the way it's going to be. And there is quite some work comes along in this. Can't wait to see how it's all going to turn out, but you know, I'd say for one thing that there's been a lot to see, a lot to do, and a lot to say, and I say that this is just the time when work becomes essential. I seem to know these days that there's things you're going to find when you go to work about places that anywhere you go, there's going to be times you'll want to work away on things. One thing I forgot to mention as I was starting this video is that what you see at the beginning of the video is what I was talking about in the last one. I told you about how I was taking some raccoon fur and some beaver fur and a 2x4 that I carved and making it into a little taxidermy that is going to be of a baboon. You know, it's just the kind of thing where you see the work involved. I'd like to share a little bit more about that. You know, you see that kind of made its little face out of blue felt and used some orange paint to make its eyes and little pink paint to make its nose, kind of a rather purplish type of pink to that matter. And I'd say that it's a good piece of work to come along. You know, people have, I heard about how back in the old days they used to take the fur of rabbits and they would use it to make toy lions in those days. It's not really something that people do these days, but I've seen a lot of vintage stuff online, stuff that came out before my time, and all the interesting little aspects of it that seem to show what they all show, and all the things that make us have a lot of work we do, and then see how a little bit happens and goes. And I say little ways, I tell y'all. Oh, I recall a lot of old days in my life. Just remembering all those days seeing cardinals outside by the bird feeder. You know, all the little things, and how my grandmother had a store in the mall called Wildcat Country, and how they had over there these little Kentucky Wildcats that were of the University of Kentucky, and they had Louisville Cardinals over there as well, because Louisville Cardinals were fairly close, and so we had little objects based on them and where they were and what they were from. I say that there's a lot of this stuff that we're going to see. It's going to make us have a little bit more understanding by and by. I tell y'all that this is where we rub along the Cardinal's belly. I see that there's places out there where they show a lot of good things. I've always liked to do a little work here and there just to show a little craftiness about my life. I say that this is just one little thing that makes its way into my heart. How we go about our work doing little bitty things we do and see how life takes itself to us. And as we know, we kind of got to put a little character sure into what we do. I know one thing, that work is good, it's all good, and sometimes I can always kind of look at these Cardinals and see the work on them that has yet to be done, has yet to come, all the ways it's going to make itself look in the very, very long run. Oh, I tell y'all that work is going to be fine for us. All these little things we do. And I'll tell y'all, when it comes to sanding things, if you're not holding on tight, they can kind of slip out of your hands, just like that little birdie just did. And I say that little work is just finding its way up to us and blowing us down to smithereens. I tell y'all that I remember when we had a next door neighbor when we were kids, and that next door neighbor had a cat that would sometimes come into the vacant lot between our yard and theirs. And all things I could have said about that cat, I'll tell you, for one thing, we're going down to what appears to be a slightly lighter grit now. I'll tell you what that cat used to do was, it used to jump up and catch birds as it flew down by it. It would climb up in the tree to try to catch birds up in the tree, and sometimes it would even fall down on its feet out of the tree. I've always heard the saying that cats have 9 lives. Never knew exactly what that phrase meant, but people often say it's a phrase they use for the fact that no matter how they fall, they can always land on their feet. In my life, I've probably seen and heard a lot of things. There's been things I've gotten on Google to learn about. I know that when people fall great distances, they can't always land on their feet, and sometimes can end up with little broken ankles if they do. But I've seen too much about rock climbers and mountain climbers, how they climb to such heights, and sometimes they fall or they land, and when they do, it's like, you know, I've probably known a few to have some broken bones or be in critical condition, but read on Google about a few that had even passed away when it happened. So this is where we are careful and cautious about our choices we make. Sometimes I say that there's little issues in life where some people wouldn't be as likely as others to do it. I've thought about wanting to do it a time or two, but somebody only suggested to me that I try top roping, because leading would probably be a little bit too dangerous for my conditions for lack of focus. Sometimes rock climbers go up together tied to a rope, and if one falls, they both fall together. seen a lot of that stuff online, and I tell you all that it's almost like back in the late 80s and early 90s how they were advertising those Time Life books and telling the story about a man who jumped from a plane and his parachute went open and fell 2,500 feet and lived to tell about it. It's a miracle in itself, you know. We hear a lot of miracle stories these days, you know. Sometimes we're always blessed by what we learn and by what we hear. Think about all the things, ways people live to tell the tale about things, and all the ways we're just happy to know that they survive. Too many times I hear stories in life about how it is in Red River Gorge and places like that, how, you know, that people can just simply be out hiking, and if they're just simply out hiking, they can fall somewhere from 600 to 1,000 feet, and it can just kind of cause a little danger to them. I've seen too much endangerment in life to really know what's left of people, but I say we're finally getting down to one last grit, down to a 240. This is probably about the thinnest grit that I get my sandpaper in, and finally come down to where we are sanding it the last little bit to make it so it's going to draw itself up and come down to where we see a little fine lining, fine smooth wood, and it's going to come down to where soon we'll be ready to draw some lines that will be ready to be burnt in, come by and paint little places and try them in the dye when they work. And I say that this is going to be the little ways it goes. Perhaps this video could end up being a little long because of the extra work I'm putting into things, and so I say that this is going to be the brightest year, brightest day in work for us. I say that kindly time comes, and when we kind of get past the point where we need to be on things, I say that this is going to be the work of our hands, the work that we do. Could end up from all this sanding and carving with hard hands like a farmer or like a construction worker or something like that. I've known quite a few farm workers in my life and quite a few construction workers whose hands would get really hard and calloused from all the work they did. And there are times when even from all the hard carving that I do and all the little extra rough sanding, there can be the little moments my hands can kind of just about get that way in some places. And I say that a little business and time and work in our lives can make things come to the better for us. These days I'm just blessed by what I'm able to afford, what I'm able to do. There's a lot of things that couldn't have been the way things I've had all my life, and all the little work that comes to be involved. And I say that a little time and effort shall work its way in and make it so we shall see a little more light of day and be in really blessedness of all divine things. I say that we finally come down to where we sanded our last upon these Cardinals. Hopefully we can put a temporary end to the series right here and be back around when it comes time to draw the lines, burn the lines, and even paint them and dye them. So, glad to have you all around to watch these videos, to see me instruct, to see me teach how I go about it, show you all a little time and effort and how work comes. There's going to be a little more to do later on, but I've pretty much said all I needed to say here, so thank you all again for watching. Stay in touch.